Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business of Life podcast, live here, sponsored by Vuvix TV and NFA. Now, we are here with an engineer, a pilot, sailor, entrepreneur, and father of the world's richest man. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Errol Musk. Errol, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good to have you on the show. Good to have you on the show.
Yeah.
So,
Nice to be here.
right, this podcast is called A Business of Life. So we will go all the way from the past, obviously present, future. So let's go to the past. Now, let's talk about, I want to delve into your dad. Your dad, Walter Henry James Musk. Because this is where you come from. Before we even start talking about anything else, let's talk about you, where you come from. So Walter was basically taken to the military at a very young age. Your mom, Cora Amelia Robinson, was responsible for looking after you. Talk to me about your upbringing, all right? What was it like with your dad, and what was it like with your mom growing up?
Well, you know, my father went into the military at the age of about 19. And he came out at the age of about 27. He was in crypt analyst work, you know, sort of intelligence work. And the military, the 6 years or so that he was in the military, in the war, actually turned him into a bit of a wreck. You know, he was a real wreck when he came out because he had experienced a lot of misery, and he'd lost some of his friends who'd been, you know, killed in the war. And in the terrible ways and things like that. So he came out of the war a little bit a wreck. He met my mother. My mother was from England. She was a refugee. She came out on a refugee ship during the war to South Africa. And she met my father, and they seemed to get on with each other. And then we grew up in Hillbrow, which was then a very cosmopolitan part of Johannesburg. It was a big melting pot, and we were very poor. You know, we lived in a boarding house, and most of the people were from Europe, and they would sort of be two people to one room. But we had my father, my mother, and myself. We actually had two rooms. So I never had a bed or a bedroom. I slept on the couch until I was about 10 years of age. But I had the advantage of having these refugees from Europe after the war, you know, right after the war, come every night to my parents' little lounge and talk right into the night. And I would sleep under the bed, under the table. And I could listen to everything they said and listen to their songs and listen to, you know, them laughing and crying and fighting and everything. And it was quite an education for me as a young boy. Then I went back to England with my mother when I was 10 years of age. And I stayed in England for a couple of years with her because, as I say, my father was not able to support her, and she left him. And oddly enough, while we were away,
that was about 1956 when you went back to England. You went back to the UK, 1956, right?
56.
Around that time. Yeah. How was it like? How was it like in the UK when you, because obviously leaving South Africa and going back to the UK, that must have been a transition for you.
Well, yes, you know, South Africa was a very harsh place. And where we lived in Hillbrow, a lot of gangs, and, you know, kids suffered a lot. You know, you more or less got a thrashing about every single day. All of us, all the kids seemed to get a thrashing every single day, or hiding, we call it. And then when I went to England, when I was 10 years old, I couldn't believe it because the people were so nice to children. I couldn't believe it. They actually liked children in England. And that was kind of a very big shock to me because everything was set up in England where I lived in London and then Gloucester and Bristol and so on. Everything was set up for children, and the people kind of loved children. So it was really great, you know, to be in England. And then I came back to South Africa 2 years later. The first day at school when I was in South Africa, the first day, the school bully challenged me to 10 rounds in a boxing match.
Whoa.
I didn't know anybody.
Whoa. That's mad.
And then the headmaster, that's not funny. That's not all. The headmaster of the school offered to be the referee.
You are joking. What, the headmaster of the school, instead of helping separate you guys, wanted to be the referee of the fight. Literally, that is hashtag only in South Africa.
South Africa was terrible, terrible. You know, it was all about fighting and arguing, and nobody liked anybody else, and everybody hated everybody. You know, it was terrible.
And obviously, at that time, it was South Africa was going through the apartheid, and I mean, you obviously were right in the middle of it. Growing through that period, how was it for you guys? You know, how was it for you going through that period? Because obviously, coming from the British side of things, it must have been hard for you as well, in a way, because obviously the Dutch side of things, we're really the ruling class, to be quite honest. So how was it for you and integrating? And again, how do you see the changes now? Do you see more harmony between the races now? Do you think it's better now than it was, or is it much more worse?
Well, yes, just a small example, you know, when we came back to South Africa, we came back halfway through the school academic year. So I started at a school, and actually, because of my learning in England, I actually came top of the class set right away. And but apart from that, my little brother then was only in grade 1. I was in grade 7, and we had to walk to the school and walk home. And more or less, as I say, on the first day, I was challenged to a boxing match with the principal would be the referee. That was terrible. And then in the days that followed, you know, we would be walking home, and then the Dutch boys would catch us, and then they would you know, sort of urinate in our school bags and throw our school bags onto the railway line, over the fence, you know. And so we had to struggle to get our school bags back. It was terrible. It was really terrible. The house that we moved into was in a sort of Dutch area, and they came along and they threw it full of clods of red soil and signs and telling us that we must leave, you know, we must go away, you know, because we are English, you know, something like that. And it wasn't very nice. It was terrible, actually. But as time went by, it got better, you know. And I suppose, what was the last part of your question again?
I'm thinking about now. I mean, do you think things have changed now? Because obviously that time there was quite a lot, as you said, there's quite a lot of violence. There's quite a lot of racial tension. Do you think it's better now, or do you think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done now in terms of harmony in the country?
No. In those days, fighting, the adult men fought with each other. You know, it was terrible. But now South Africa's never been better, and we have like zero racism here. Zero. I haven't seen racism. I never come across racism in the recent years. I certainly in recent times, I never seen it. Nothing. There's no racism here. Nothing.
Not even a little bit, Errol? Not even a tiny bit?
No, I live in a Dutch area. I mean, this is more predominantly Dutch where I'm living at the moment, but there's no racism. People have completely got over that kind of thing here, if you know what I mean. There's no race riots or anything of that nature. The only problems people when protest, they're looking for higher wages, you know, that kind of thing.
Jobs,
and they have a wide street. But we don't have any kind of, even with this Israeli war, you might think, well, with the Hamas and Israel, you might think something would show up here, but nothing. Nobody. There's no problem here. There's all kinds of people.
So there is progress. There's progress happening. Yes, no,
South Africa's never been better. Never been better.
Amazing. Now, obviously, you talked about your time at school, but there was a time when now you started kind of looking at your own future and what you wanted to become, and you kind of took very different paths in terms of engineering, being a sailor, pilot, entrepreneurship. What made you so much wealth to be able to buy your own aeroplane at age 24? Because I started in business quite early. I started business at 18. I made my first million at 22. But in the UK, you couldn't afford to buy an aeroplane because, yes, you can buy cheap aeroplanes, but where do you keep it? The maintenance is mental. Like, I know friends that had private jets that were like, guys, you know what? If I'd known, I mean, this is a liability. But so first and foremost, how did you get the wealth to, at 24 years of age, to then think, you know what? The first thing I need to know, it's not buying cars, houses. Let's go straight in for the planes, because this commercial airline is not going to work for me. We need to go straight in for the private plane.
Yes, well, actually, I studied engineering, and I'm sort of like scientifically orientated and things like that. And oddly enough, when I lived in Bristol, I lived next to Fulton Airport, so I used to see the jets flying all the time. And then when we came back, but anyway, as time went by, when I finished my studies, I started working for a firm of consulting engineers, and they were from England, actually, and they were not really taking South Africa work seriously. As it happened, they were kind of viewing South Africa as a bit of a second-rate place or something. I don't know. Anyway, they were given orders to leave, or they were going to be prosecuted. So they had this office, and so there was an older man there, and he said to me, I was only 23, and he said to me, shouldn't we take over this office? I even didn't have professional status. I had to fast forward my professional status, which I did. And then we took over this practice when I was like 23, and then he was about 35, so that helped. But and he was quite experienced, and we just went straight on and did extremely well. And within about a year or so, within less than a year, he couldn't take the stress, this older man, and he because you never know when you're going to get paid anything, and so he wanted to leave. So I carried on my own, and I never said no to clients. I'm a bit like Elon, I suppose. I never said no to clients. I said yes. I can do it. And so people brought all sorts of problems to me, and then I would solve the problems. And then, and not only that, I'd do the job better, quicker, and cheaper. But
wait, before you move on, Errol, where did you get that from? Because there is something entrepreneurial for not being scared of opportunities, because a lot of people that have missed out on big opportunities because they said no, I can't do it, instead of saying yes and then learning how to do it. So where did you get that from? That's why I started with your dad and your mom, because that needs to. So for me, for example, I got that from my mom, right? And because my dad and mom went into business, so I saw my mom just literally from a young age, she literally would do. I mean, she was a lawyer and then started a company. She would just go for it. So where did you get that tenacity to say, I'm not saying no to everything. I'm not scared. I can do this. I'm going to find out. How to do it.
Well, I was the same as you, exactly the same. So I grew up terribly poor, and I mean, really, I never had any money at school or to take to school ever. I never had, sandwiches or any of the kind of things that other kids had. I never had anything like that. And so I was determined that, I started working for a department store when I was 13 years old. I told them I was 15, but I was 13. And I worked in this department store packing things and all that sort of stuff from the age of 13. And then, so I was able to have some money as a boy, from about 13 onwards, a little bit of money. And then, I decided, when I came out of, I suppose, like you, I wasn't going to, I was going to give it a go. I mean, just try. Anyway, I found that I had a knack for the kind of work I was doing. So it was power distribution, air conditioning, heating, ventilating, steam engines, steam machines, everything. I just seemed to know exactly what to do. And it was easy for me, just like I have no idea how to play a piano or something. I don't know how to do that. But I knew about those kind of things quite easily. They seem to be easy for me. And so like Elon, I mean, if you consider Elon, the engineering achievements he's made. I mean, 6 months ago when we were talking to a SpaceX crowd at Boca Chica in Texas, where we just launched the Starship, Elon stopped the crowd and he said to them all, about 250 people, he put his arm around me and said, "This is my dad. He taught me everything I know about engineering."
Amazing.
And then,
Amazing.
I said, no, I'm sure he learned himself a lot, but yeah, so we kind of have a bit of an ability in that regard. So don't ask me for other things. I'm not good at other things, but I was pretty good at that work. So the result was, I didn't realize how much money you make as a consulting engineer. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. The amount of money you make was staggering, So suddenly, I'm like in the super duper tax bracket and everything. And then if you buy an airplane, then it's tax deductible. So you buy an airplane because you don't have,
right.
And so I bought my first airplane at the age of, I reckon I was about 24. And
Right.
I used that for quite a while, but I've had about 40 airplanes since then, So that's a long
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
And we have
amazing. That's
about 7
amazing.
jets now. Eh? We have about
That's
7 jets
amazing.
at the moment.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about when you had the property at Santon. I think it was about 12 acres of land at Santon. And you actually went through something that was quite tragic. And it was something that for anyone's standard, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So you were at your property, as you do. And Santon is not the Santon that we see today. I'm sure back in the day it was kind of like a different Santon altogether. And you ended up shooting a couple of people who tried to break into your property. Now that's straight out of a cowboy movie, right? It's not something to joke about. It's just something to be like, hey, I mean, of all the things that can happen, how is this happening? How did that all happen?
Well, at that time, it was about 4 years after the end of apartheid, and South Africa was in a very mixed up state. The economy was terrible. Interest rates were through the roof. Nobody quite knew what they were doing to try and get out of it. It took a few years still before things became better. And actually, there were like lawlessness everywhere. People, sort of gangs were breaking in and into people's houses. People were being killed. In their doors, standing at their door and everything, just for a cell phone or for whatever they could take.
Wow.
And anyway, so one evening, by that stage, I had a couple of houses in Santon, and I was renting one of them out. And I went to this. It was on 12 acres, yeah, right. And I went there to see how the painters had. I was painting the house out for new tenants, hopefully to get new tenants, and took my 6-year-old daughter, and we got there at about 5 in the afternoon. The sun was going down, and the painters left, and we put all the lights on, thank heavens. And then my little girl, she was 6 years old. She wanted to. We used to live there, so she wanted to get a bath. She decided she's going to take a bath in the main bedroom. So she started. I ran a tap for her, bath for her, and we didn't have towels or anything, but she just said she wants to do it. So I said, okay, fine. And I always carry a weapon in those days. Always had to carry a weapon. And so I put the weapon on the shelf in the bathroom, and then I heard noise from the lounge, a little bit of noise, and I went up to look in the lounge. It's up a long passage, and then I went into this lounge, and there were a lot of men in the lounge, 6 or 7 guys, and the one in front. I said I didn't know how they got in because there was an electric fence around the house already, and so I said to the leading guy, the guy who looked like he was in a tie and jacket or something, do you want to rent? Are you looking to rent a house, And then he smiled. I just remember him smiling, and he raised his hand. He had a black jacket on, and he was a black guy, and he had something in his hand. I couldn't see it. And then I just saw the flames come from his hand, and he shot from his hip sort of thing. And I must have moved or something, but the bullet went past me into a glass door behind me, and then I was able to run back down the passage and retrieve my gun. And then when they came down the passage, they all came down the passage. Then I came out and I shot them. I only fired 2 shots, and I killed 3 people. But it was a Magnum, you see, so it's a dangerous gun. And then they fired 52 shots at me. 52.
That's 52. Mad. That's mad.
No, the house was a wreck. The house was a wreck.
Crazy.
My daughter and I escaped through a window. They shot the glass out of a window completely. So we were able to climb out through a window that glass had been smashed out of into the garden. And my daughter and I managed to escape, Yeah.
That must have been tragic, because on both sides, for people to be wanting to rob, there's a desperation and a poverty need there. On your side, for you and your daughter, your small daughter, to feel unsafe in your own property, that is something you don't wish on anybody. And then to witness, obviously you'd been in the military. I don't know if you'd been through training in the military, which gave you a little bit of an advantage on learning how to use the weapon.
Yeah.
Did that cause nightmares? Because obviously, even as a self-defense thing, killing people, literally, you got to do what you got to do in that kind of situation. But does that cause nightmares for you? Because obviously that's trauma that needs some kind of help, some kind of therapy. And so did you have to go through therapy? And I would assume your daughter too would have had to go through a level of therapy or a talk about that trauma for a long period of time.
Well, yes, I was in the military for 11 years, mainly because I liked it. I enjoyed I was an officer, and so I was officer in command of a unit, and I enjoyed the camps and everything. It was I liked it. And so I did a lot of shooting. I won the South African Defence Force shooting championships over a week once, from handguns to cannons. So I was pretty good at shooting. But I wouldn't say that had a major effect on that night. But the thing is, that night, it's either a case you run for your life or you shoot back. So I shot back. Yeah. But afterwards, I'm not proud of it. Obviously, I wish it hadn't happened. And repairing the house was terrible. But blood everywhere. You can't imagine how much blood there was. And anyway, my daughter, I remember her saying, "So much blood, Dad, so much blood." And so we had to go and see psychologists, and I took her, and they took her to a child police psychologist people, and I went in. There's like a room all like Disney characters, and then the lady said to my daughter, "How do you feel about this shooting of 4 days ago at the time?" And my daughter said, "No, she's all right." So then the psychologist said, "Why?" And then my daughter said, "Well, my dad won."
Jesus
my dad
Christ.
won. My father won. So funny. So that helps a little bit. But it took her a long time to be on her own, if you know what I mean. A long time, years before she's now 30, and she took years to come right, to not worry about being alone at night. Yeah, obviously.
No, that's such an experience that you will not wish on anybody. No. So you have you mentioned your daughter there. You have Alexandra, you have Elon, Kimber. I'm just trying to remember from the top of my head, because you have a lot of kids, Errol. Let's be honest. This is what I mean. So it's Alexandra, Elon, Kimber. Let me think again. Tosca. There's Tosca as well. And your first. There's more.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Carry on.
Is there more that we don't know about? But yeah, your first marriage was with May, May Musk, who ended up becoming very respected model. She did a lot of stuff. Was it love at first sight when you first saw her? And how did you guys hook up? And how did that all kind of come about?
Well, when I came to school back from England and went into grade 7, or May was in grade 5, so I actually saw her for the first time at that school when I was 12 years old, and she was probably 10 years old. I never really spoke much with her as the years went by. We went to the same high school, and then when she was in grade 11 or something, I was out of school. I invited her out one time, and we just clicked. We just were like clicked right away, and then we went out for years, and then we finally got married 6 years later. And so we just got on really well at that time. Yeah, it was just one of those things. Her family, her parents were American. Her father's an American, her mother was Canadian, and they were very into things, like flying. The guy had an airplane. He brought it out from Canada, and so on, a little airplane. And so I got on with them because they were very interesting people,
Right. So her parents liked you. The parents were accepting of you and everything else.
No, not really. You know,
Mm.
her parents came out to South Africa from America and Canada
Yeah.
because they in 1948 or something, or 19 thereabouts, because they were happy with that the Dutch people, the Dutch element here in South Africa had won the election, and
Oh,
May's parents were very into apartheid. They wanted to go to a place where there was apartheid,
what
so they came here to
into it
support
as in
apartheid.
supporting it, into it as in
Yes, they
supporting it.
they they they
Whoa.
they they came to South Africa because they left Canada. In Canada during the war, the father, May's father, he was a very interesting guy and he was a very good pilot, but he supported like Hitler, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't think they knew what
Wow.
Hitler was doing. I mean, I don't think they had any idea what was going on, but they supported Hitler. And then after they came here, you know, when I met them, they would tell me that there was no Holocaust. You know, there was no
Wow.
Holocaust, and
Wow.
it's all lies and all that sort of stuff. You know, and so I had a bit of a hard
So there must
time
have
with
been
them.
a lot of arguments in the
Yeah,
house then. That
yeah,
because that would lead to
yeah, a lot of
heavy arguments.
arguments. I used to argue with them all the time and say, you know, eventually got to the point where I said, "Listen, you guys are nuts. You are crazy." And then they told me I can't come there anymore. So then I said, "No, that's fine. I'll leave." And May was very upset, you know. And May was also a little. She was a very pretty girl, but she was always a
Yeah.
little bit on the heavy side. And then
Right.
when I left that time, when I said, "Look, I've had enough," I said, "I don't want to be in this scene anymore." You know, and they told me they're going to get somebody else to go out with her, and I must go, you know, that sort of stuff. So I left, and then May was so upset she cried for 3 weeks, and then she lost all
Well.
this weight, and she became very, very thin.
Oh,
And then people said to her, "Why don't you enter the Miss Province, the Transvaal province? You know, one of the provinces
that's
to be Miss
crazy.
Transvaal." So she entered and she won, and so then she was a Miss South Africa finalist. So losing a bit of weight helped her to get away from that chubby child look, you know, not chubby, but
Yeah.
a bit overweight. And so it helped her a lot, you know. And she went on and won a lot of prizes, and then eventually spent her life modeling, you know.
So
But
at this
eventually
point,
we got together again, and I told her parents they can do what we like. I'm getting married to her, so that's all there is to it.
yeah. And how did you propose to her? What was it like? Because obviously the parents were not on side, so you had to kind of like you had to be everything. You know what I mean? And for her as well, that must have been, you know, women like when your parents are like in approval. So for her as well, that was a big risk for her to be like, you know what, I'm not going to listen to the parents. I'm literally going to marry Errol. So how was it like the proposal? What did you do to make her say yes? Because this time, don't forget, Errol, she's coming looking the part. You know, before she was a bit on the large side. This time she's now a model. She's looking like, do you know what I mean? This is not the same. This is not yesterday's price. This is today's price. So how did you do it? How did you propose?
Well, as I say, we split up that time, and we were separated for about 15 months. And then she came back to me. She came and saw me, and we started seeing each other without anybody knowing, you know. And then she got a job in another city. I was in Johannesburg, Victoria, and she got a job in Cape Town, which is 1,000 miles away. And then
Right.
I thought, look, I want to marry her. So I went and got a diamond ring made. I bought 2 diamonds, loose diamonds. I managed to get through because I was now connecting with a lot of big shots in my work that I was doing. And I
Right.
bought a couple of diamonds. And these people that I was doing work for had the diamond set for me in a ring, and then I put it in the post. I didn't say anything. I just didn't say, "Do you want to marry me?" or anything. I just put the ring in the box, and I posted it to May, and she arrived in Cape Town, and I didn't say anything on it. Just had a return address on it, and then she phoned me, and you know, and said, you know, yeah, she wants to get married. So then
Wow, that
we
was
got
it.
married. 3 months later, we got married, and
Wow.
yeah.
And
Took
did
her to
her
Europe on
parents come
honeymoon.
to the?
I
Did the
was
parents
24
come to the
years old.
wedding? Did
Yes,
the
yes, they
parents
did.
come to the
You know,
wedding? They did.
yes, yes. They all sort of forgot about the problems, you know, sort of.
Right.
And yeah, and you know, we had our ups and downs still, but anyway, we got on. Anyway, made a plan. We made it work. But on more interesting side, I was 24, and she was 22, and I took her for 3 weeks to Europe for a honeymoon. In those days, it was quite unusual in the end of the 60s to take somebody on honeymoon to Europe from South Africa. People here didn't really do much like that. But I took May on honeymoon to Europe. That's because I was doing well. I could afford to do things like that, you see.
No, I mean, and how was the marriage? Because obviously it's exciting, the courting stages, the dating stages. But when obviously, you start now living together on a day-to-day basis, and you're now married, you have to learn to get on with each other. So what was it like now living together? Was the love still there? Were you still, because obviously you were showing her that you were quite a romantic. You were taking her on dates to Europe. Were you still taking her on dates to Europe while you were married? That's why I always say to men, if you're going to start one way, you got to keep it going. Because a year, 2 years into the marriage, you'll be like, well, he doesn't take me to trips to Europe anymore. We're not getting any dates anymore. What's going on? So how was the actual marriage itself?
Oh, the marriage was great. We were married for 10 years. We were like one person. And, we loved each other to bits. I certainly loved her to bits. And then after about 10 years, we started doing different things. I started taking flying very seriously. I like to do ocean sailing. She didn't like any of those kind of things. And she used to get very sick. And then also she started getting a lot of modeling work, and she started mixing in the modeling world. And the modeling world is very different for any world I knew. I didn't really fit into that crowd. They were very different kind of people. Yeah. She liked that kind of world a lot, and I didn't like it at all. And so we, people sort of go different directions. And so we had an amicable, no argument divorce. And she went to, at that stage, I owned I had a property I could give her to go and live in, and she went to this beautiful home that I gave her, and we were divorced, and that's the end of it. And I just went on with my life, and she went on with hers.
So that was in 1979. You guys got divorced. So 1979, 1980.
No, 80. Yeah.
Oh, 1980s. All right, so in 1980, so you guys got divorced, and since then, she's gone on to say she doesn't want to speak to you anymore, or she's an animosity there, and then she accused you of domestic violence and things like that. Is that something that you look at and say, it's been 40 something years? Is there any truth in it, or is that something that as grown adults that you've gone through so much, there's got to be, I can't see why you guys can't be friends. Like, I mean, literally, you produced a lot of good things in the world, obviously. So why can't you be friends? I mean, what did you do?
Well, after she left, I went on with my life, and she lived then she moved to another city, because the house I gave her was 500 miles away, and she went to live in another city, and the two boys stayed with me, and my daughter went with her, and our daughter went with her, and we had no difficulty at all. Nobody, problems at all. She actually came back about 2 years, 3 years after the divorce with a friend, and the friend told me, well-known Johannesburg woman, said to me, you and May need to get your act together and get back together. But I didn't want to do that at that point, because May had been engaged to somebody, and I didn't feel like it. I just said, no, I don't want to do that. I was
it's the male ego.
Yeah, I felt a bit stupid. I think I was stupid, but I really didn't want to. At that point, I didn't feel comfortable. But as the years went by, we sort of eventually she moved. We saw each other occasionally, and then we would go out with children for lunch sometimes, and then she moved to America in '89, to Canada rather, with my daughter, and she left South Africa, and we never had any problems at all, and only in the last 4 years or something has she started writing in books and things that I physically hit her and punched her, and all that kind of thing. And well, that's rubbish. I mean, it's just total nonsense. And I don't know why she's doing it. I don't know, for to sell books or something. I don't know, but it's nonsense. The children know it's nonsense. And I the other day I saw a thing on the news which said my daughter Tosca. This was just a week ago. My daughter Tosca had told some news outlet that she used to have to pull me away from her mother.
That's crazy.
Because I was trying to hit her mother and all that sort of stuff. So I got hold of Tosca in America. Tosca lives in Georgia, in Atlanta. And I sent her this cutting from the newspaper. And I said, what is this? And Tosca said to me a week ago, she said, Dad, it's just the media. I must just ignore it. It's the media, But families have their problems, The biggest politics in life is families.
100, I completely agree with you.
Arguing with each other, So I don't know. I just hope it will get over, get finished. I'm not too worried about it.
No, definitely. So after that, your second wife was Heidi. You then married Heidi. How was that? Was that what long period before after May did you find Heidi, and where did you meet? And was that love at first sight as well? Was that kind of like immediate attraction?
Yes, I was single for many years, for 10 years, And then I met her. She just lost her husband in a car crash, and she was 25, and I was 44, and we got on very well, and very quickly we got married, and again, you come back to that Dutch versus South African Dutch versus English here in South Africa. She's from very Afrikaans, very Dutch, and they didn't want her to marry an English guy. And so I'm supposed to be an English guy, but I'm not.
The parents are the problem. I'm starting to see the parents. I think the parents are the problem. I'm telling you.
I tell you, what a problem.
It's parents.
But anyway, we got married anyway, and we have two lovely daughters. And the marriage didn't last all that long. I mean, it lasted about 10 years also, but it off and on, because during the marriage, she was much younger than me, so we had our ups and downs. We split up for a while, and then we got back together, and then we split up for a while, then we got back together, and then finally we divorced in 2004, and amicably, luckily, everybody very happy, and we've just lived separately ever since. So, and I spoke to her today, and so we get on pretty well.
So you split up with Heidi, and this one, I'm hoping your answer to this next one will be, one day you were just walking into the house, minding your own business, and Eskom took off the electricity. Electricity just went off. So it wasn't your fault, and then you just ended up, and then the electricity came up. You said, stepdaughter. Heidi's stepdaughter, and you're like, well, let's blame this on Eskom, because this is not. I mean, this is clearly the lights were off. So what I'm leading up to is Heidi's stepdaughter then became your girlfriend, or did you marry her, or was it your girlfriend then? Because that one was a bit hardcore. Let's be honest, Errol. That was a bit hardcore. How did that happen?
Well, no, Haida, when I married her, she had 3 children, and small children.
That's Heidi.
Yes,
is that Heidi or
Haida?
Yes,
Haida.
Haida.
She had 3 children, and I tried. As I say, we were together for a couple of years, and we split up for about 3 years, and we got back together again. So I wasn't always, like with her children. Her daughter went to stay with people at a point, with relatives at one point, and she was gone, from the house. But I mean, I knew about her, and then we finally got divorced in 2004. And at the time that we got divorced, Jana, who was her daughter, had been studying, doing some studies in the Northern Cape somewhere. I don't know where she was, but she was gone. Anyway, I never saw much of her. And then about 10 years after that, in 2014, then I got a call from Jana. First, a letter saying that she'd like to speak to me and that. And then she called me and she said that she's in terrible conditions and can I help her? So can I do anything for her? I don't know exactly what it was, but she said because she's going to kill herself if somebody doesn't help her.
Oh, wow.
So, anyway, so then I made a plan to see her. I was on my way to America the next day. The very next day I was on my way to the United States. But I managed to see her before I left. And I saw that she was in very poor condition, very, very thin. And she lived in a storeroom of an old shopping center that wasn't being used with some character, some guy who was like a surfer or something,
Right.
And I've only seen him twice I've only ever seen him twice. And so I saw how bad it was. And I said, look, and I bought her some clothes before I went overseas, a whole lot of clothes. And then I gave her money for while I was away. And then when I came back, I sent her money every week. So like for toiletries and food, not a lot of money, but I mean, it was enough to buy toiletries and food, which I thought as a young girl she needed. She was 29 and she already had an 8-year-old daughter,
Wow.
She had a daughter already and of 7 or 8 years old. I'm not sure. And anyway, the daughter had been taken away by foster care, sort of thing. So it's a bit lousy. But at any rate, but we now see the daughter a lot, and the daughter lives in Australia, Jana's daughter, but we do communicate with her a lot. So things are much better now. But at any rate, so I looked after Jana for the next 2 years. They lived in a town far away from me, so I would just send her money through the bank, and every week. And as time went by, it got a bit more. And then I also bought her a second-hand car. And then after about 2 years, in about 2016, she contacted me, said that she's been thrown out of this place where she's staying with this same man, and she doesn't know what to do. And she said all her things are on the pavement, and I said, where have you got the vehicle? And she said, yes, I've got the vehicle. I said, well, put everything into the vehicle and come here, And so she came here, and she stayed here for about 2.5 weeks or something like that. And we got on very, very well. At that time, my daughter Rose, who I had custody of, was still at school. And so Rose was living with me. I had custody of Rose. And Rose was then about 16, 17. And so Jana came and stayed with me and Rose here. And, Jana and I got on very well during that time. And we sort of, I don't know, we just formed a relationship. She's a very mature woman. She's a very mature girl. And so then the boyfriend was crying all the time for her to come back,
right,
and everything. So she said she'll go and try again with the boyfriend. So I said, all right. So off she went, and she went to the boyfriend. And then about 2 months later, she came back to see me, and she said that she's pregnant. And so I said, well, it's not me. Can't be me. And she said, well, you're the only one. She said to me, I'm the only one that she has a relationship with like that. So I said, oh. So then I had a blood test done in Canada, prenatal blood tests, and it confirmed that the boy, it turned out to be a little boy, was my little boy. And so he's now 7, if this was a little earlier, Jana was here a few minutes ago, you could have spoken to her, and she's just gone off with children. So we spend a lot of our time together still, and we have a very good relationship. So that's where it is. That's where it stands.
So Errol is not Escom then, so we can't blame it on Escom. This was purely you two making that choice.
I mean, so she was born. She was 30 years old. I mean, 30 is not a. She's not a young girl, I mean, 30 is quite old. I would have thought. I mean, Jan is 37 now.
You say so. So is it true that you because obviously you're looking after Kimbo and Elon? Did you take Elon to a naked party at 9 years old when he was 9? Did you take him to a naked party?
No, I got what happened was, in those days, after May and I split up, the boys stayed with me, you see, and my mom was like helping a lot to be like the fill-in mother, And I'm not sure where Kimball was, but I was invited one day I think during the week or something, to a dinner party. I lived in a sort of very upmarket sort of area, and people were kind of really wealthy and everything. And I was invited to this dinner, and I happened to have Elon with me, and I told them, look, I can't bring a partner because I'm not bringing anybody. I'm just bringing my son, And this was a very fascinating South African entrepreneur, a very famous guy. I won't mention his name. And he said, sure, no, come anyway. So I went to the party, and it was, it must have been about 10 dinner guests, including me and Elon. And, I was still dressed in my business suit and all that sort of stuff. Elon was still in school clothes. And that night, this guy, it was just when they'd started it was 1982. Everybody had got this craze to have a jacuzzi, jacuzzi. And it was like a new thing, everybody's getting a jacuzzi. And the same chap put one in. He even put one into my house later. And lovely. He was a very capable guy. The guys whose house we were at. Anyway, so when we finished eating, he threw each of us a towel. There was a mixed company, men and women, and me and Elon. And he threw everybody except Elon, of course. I took Elon to his library. He had a beautiful library. And this guy, Elon, spent the night in the library. But everybody just went to the jacuzzi and stripped off all their clothes and jumped into the jacuzzi. It was quite a kind of weird thing to do. I mean, nowadays, I don't know if it's normal now, but anyway, it was kind of strange then, but that's what we did. And it was, I don't know, it's just one of those things. And so everybody was running around, walking around naked, drinking wine naked, And of course, I was always worried, where's Elon? But he was too busy reading books and things in the library. So, that's what happened. But nothing bad.
No, definitely.
Serious. It wasn't bad. Like a
fair enough. Fair enough. And so at that point, Elon was literally still kind of like finding his way. It was still young. And then obviously when Elon thinks about 10. About 10. So when he thinks about those times, he keeps, I don't know how true this is. He keeps saying when he was at school during those times, he was bullied and it was very tough times for him. And before you answer that, sometimes I wasn't bullied. No one would be able to bully me at school. However, knowing kids that were bullied, I used to help kids that were bullied sometimes. And knowing kids that were bullied, it wasn't the ones that were consistently bullied that had impact. It was the ones that one incident happened that was a push too far. So it kind of will be the ones that they won't tell you that. They will be kind of teasing them all the way through, especially if you're a nerdy kid, you'll be teased all the way through. And then one day somebody will do something to you and that just scars you for life. And that will be the thing that will kind of change your whole life. Do you, because obviously he says he's been bullied, obviously by your standards, you were bullied, So by your standards, it couldn't be the same standard, but do you think he was bullied?
No.
And was there any incident like that?
Well, you put it very well. You describe it very well now, listening to you. Yes. No, South Africa was a bit of a rough place. Like, I mean, as I say, you had to sort of watch yourself all the time at school. I mean, you couldn't. There was people. They'd clout you for nothing. If you call that bullying, you just get used to it. I mean, if you did well in the tests or something, they'd wait for you at the school gate and whack you with their school bags, and
it's bullying. That's bullying.
South Africa was kind of it was not the nicest scene, but anyway, So but it was not. It wasn't bullying. It was male on male. Male on male. Pecking order, trying to prove who's the strongest. And all this sort of stuff. And so guys like myself and I suppose Elon and Kimball and my friends at any rate, we sort of like you just learn the ropes, to avoid problems. But on one occasion, Elon was at a school that was in a very good area, but they drew people from quite a rough area as well. Anyway, be that as it may, this one boy, his father, apparently committed suicide, and and he was a young boy. They were only 13 years old, and when he came to school, apparently I got this from the headmaster. So the headmaster told me this. I only heard it from the headmaster. So when this boy came to school, the kids heard about it or something, and then you know how kids are. And then, as it happened, Elon apparently said to this boy that his father was stupid. And
oh no,
Elon didn't mean it. I don't think Elon meant harm. What he was trying to he was just a boy himself, that it was not he shouldn't have done that. That's, I think, what he should have said.
Touchy. I mean, that's the worst thing you could ever say. Yes.
Anyway, so this boy was not that smart or something, and he waited until Elon was standing at the top of a set of stairs, and then he pushed Elon down the set of stairs, and it went 2 stories down, and Elon was quite severely hurt. And then he jumped on top of Elon at the bottom, I believe, and whacked Elon with his fists and stuff. So Elon was pretty badly hurt. I then wanted to go to the police, but I went to the police, but they said, look, under the circumstances, and the headmaster told me the same. And this little boy by that stage was weeping all the time, and I felt very sorry for him. And then Elon was in hospital for 2 weeks, and then afterwards, when Elon came out of hospital, he never went back to that school. We went and I put him in Pretoria Boys High in Pretoria, which is another city away from Sandton, another city. And I moved the household to Pretoria within a few weeks so that he could be close to that school. And then we never had any more problems. And the headmaster of Pretoria Boys High wrote an article on it, wrote a letter about it, saying that at that school there was no bullying at all, and that he can confirm that any reports that Elon was bullied at Pretoria Boys High are nonsense. So it wasn't. It was just that one terrible incident, which you very clearly said can be the thing that tilts the scales.
Triggers something.
Eh?
Yeah. Yes, it could be the thing that triggers something. It could be the catalyst of
and that's how you see everything afterwards.
No, I see that. Now, obviously, with Elon becoming very successful, you have a lot of people clamoring to sell stories, and there's been allegedly, a nanny that's going around on all podcasts and things like that. Nobody knows whether she was actually a nanny or not for you guys. And she says she used to look after Elon when Elon was really young. And one day Elon did something that scared her a little bit, because Elon was into a lot of monster books and a lot of kind of books. And then she said something about Elon doing something quite demonic and opening a portal or something quite weird. Are they just allegedly crazy stories that people are just going out saying? I mean, what is there any truth to that? Because obviously you looked after. Is there any truth to that sort of stuff?
No. Elon is very, very nerdy, school book boy. I mean, he was the most trouble-free child you could ever imagine. A very good boy. And no, we never had anything like that. And apart from the fact that. I gave up my practice to spend more time with them, the 2 boys, and I took them all over the world and everything, and we never had any problems. That's ridiculous. I think people make up these stories, This
is it. This is what happens when you get to their level of fame, and obviously, when you look at Elon's relationships now, and you look at obviously his relationships with his kids, there's the child that had a transition, and obviously the marriages that he's had and everything else. Do you think sometimes it's also what you've come from, or do you think that's his own kind of his own path? Because sometimes if you've come from a family that there was a divorced background and you've not actually healed, you take that across to your own relationships, and it becomes a little bit mirroring. It becomes difficult in holding relationships. Before you answer that question, just to be on the balanced side of things, think about the other siblings as well, and see whether they're handling their relationships, and then obviously come back to Elon and see whether there is any correlation there.
Well, I think when I got married in 1970. Divorce was unheard of, we didn't know anybody was divorced. And then when in 1980, they brought out a law which said you don't have to have a reason to get a divorce anymore. You can just get divorced. And you can just say, I don't want to be married anymore. So it was a whole new law. And so after that, society seemed to crumble. And since about 1980, I mean, everybody I know, every single person, married couple I know, got divorced. Every single one. I mean, it's like par for the course. And so, you know, you just don't worry about it. You don't think about it anymore. You know, so as far as I'm trying to understand what you were asking, I mean, Elon obviously is the product of his background experiences and all that kind of thing. But he always was well looked after. He was always well dressed. He always was able to, you know, the type of struggling I knew as a child, he never knew anything like that. So,
I suppose what I'm saying, I suppose what I'm saying, just to be more specific, is if you look at your background, for example, you know, there was your dad and mom separated, and then that led to you. That's what you learned, and then there was a divorce, and then now Elon's side of things, you know, that's all he knows, but that's all you knew too, right? So. And that's for future people. I mean, I'm married, so future people in relationships, there's got to be a kind of like a healing point where you kind of reflect back and say, what do we do better? And I do agree with you that there were policies put in place to make it easy for people to divorce, and that was intentional. That was literally because the divorce rates became extremely high, and even now there's incentives for women to divorce, because if you're told, I mean, you're literally going to be richer if you're married to someone that's rich. There is, in certain countries, there's incentives that you get 50% of their revenue. So you're literally any argument can lead to a divorce. So there are loads of things that society or government, as it were, put in place to make it difficult, because our parents, like the forefathers back in the day, they, you know, they will have tough relationships and they'll just stick it till the end. Yeah, they will understand that, you know what, I've chosen this person, we're going to make it work. But you're right, there was something that happened that was intentional, that actually flowed across and is still happening today. But there's also a point of looking at it and saying, you know, for future generations coming, how do we heal? Like, what do we do to make sure? Because there's got to be a point where experience speaks volumes, right? I mean, I always say the best place to learn how not to be a thief is in prison, because you have experts that will tell you, look, this is what we did. This is what we did. So you will actually learn fast. So you've learned fast not to do it. So what is your take on all this? There's got to be a point where you sit back and say, you know, things could have been different. Not that you regret the life, because, you know, everything happens for a reason. But if I was to advise someone for the future, what can you do to maintain a good relationship? And do you think it's impacted Elon moving forward? Because, I mean, his relationships have not been smooth sailing, to say the least.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, at the time that these divorces and things take place, it seems terrible. But afterwards, you know, I now have 2 daughters by my second marriage, and I can't imagine the world without them. I mean, you know, so if I'd stayed married, I wouldn't have had these 2 daughters. So there's a reason, you know, sort of thing. And I don't, you know, no, really, there's a reason, you know. What?
It's crazy.
I don't know what you're getting at, but look.
No, I get it. I get it.
There's a reason, you know, reason for things to happen. And, you know, at the time, they seem to be terrible. But as time goes by, you know, it makes sense or something like that. But I mean, obviously, I was years ago, I was at a golf. I don't play golf very well, but I was with these golfers and I was supposed to play that day. And we were, after the golfing, we were in the 19th hole, as they call it, the pub, and we were having a drink. And then one of the guys who didn't play that day came in, you know, and we'd been talking about, it was very unusual for men to talk about divorce, because everybody, I think they were all in a mood, because they were like short of girlfriends, you know, they had no girlfriends. Girls were scarce or something like that. And everybody was like a bit miserable. And then this guy came in who had not played with us that day, but we knew he was married, and he'd been married at that time for about 18 years. And his name was de Villiers, and he came in, and everybody, one of the guys said to him, de Villiers, you're so lucky. Your marriage is so happy. You're so perfect married. You got such a fantastic life. Yeah, you're so lucky. And then he looked at us and he said, no. And even while he was doing that, he was looking at his watch and he was saying, no. I have to work on my marriage every single day. Every single day I work on my marriage. I don't know the state of my marriage every single day, he said. And we all like, ooh, what? You work on your marriage? Because when we were married, we didn't work on our marriage. We just took it for granted, and that's not right. You have to do what that de Villiers guy did, and that is you have to work on your marriage, work on your relationship. And I think people have learned that maybe in recent times. It doesn't just happen by itself. You have to work on it all the time. That's what he told us. And I would say that's what we didn't do. I would sometimes leave. I had an airplane, a very fast airplane at that later on in my marriage, twin-engine airplane, and I'd fly to places for business far away. And then there were no cell phones. So I would get stuck in a place for maybe 2 days. I never phoned May. I would just eventually get to a phone. I'd tell her I'll be back tomorrow or maybe the next day. You can't do that to people. And but that's how I did it. And that was wrong. You had to work on your marriage all the time. I think the men were at fault, certainly in my time. I just took it for granted.
I think you're right. That's terribly honest. Working on, I think on both sides as well. The men have to work on the marriage, the women have to work on the marriage. But marriage is a work in progress on a day-to-day basis. I think people get excited about the notion of just, I've fallen in love, I want to get married, it's going to be amazing. And, it always happens. It always happens. And then you go to the next partner, fall in love, amazing, it's going to be exciting. And it happens again. And it could just keep happening for the rest of your life until what you've just said there is actually gold. I mean, the simplest things in life are actually very simple. It's just, like anything, like a farmer needs to work on, watering the plants. You need to work on that marriage. I do agree with you on both sides. So now we are talking. Elon has moved to America and has launched. Well, I don't think he launched it. I think he either bought it or was part of the founding team of PayPal. And PayPal, I would say, will probably be the first fintech company of that time. And I just remember PayPal because at that time we were killing it financially and the internet was just booming. And there was things like eBay was trying to kind of like be eBay was the Amazon in those times. And I just remember looking at PayPal, say, this is a bank. This is a bank. But I just remember Elon and the team saying it's not a bank. This is not a bank. And obviously because of regulations and everything else, they just didn't want to get involved in that. Were you advising Elon then? Because that was a bold move, firstly, to go to America, and secondly, to go into fintech at a time where banks were king. Like, everyone understood. I mean, this was a weird way of financial transaction. I mean, there was Western Union. And what Western Union was doing was essentially doing partnerships with local retailers, your small shop around the corner. And I remember Western Union had a contact list on their website with every country they'd partnered with. So they won't they won't rent any space. They just come to you and you will work for them and for a little commission. Very clever. But PayPal was different. And were you involved during that time? Take me through when you found out he was involved with PayPal and what your mindset was during that time?
Well, to start with, the first business they did was they set up a system where American newspapers could go on the internet, and that was Zip2. And Elon and Kimball, as 23, 24 years of age, went to see a publishing house that was publishing 11 newspapers, major newspapers like LA Times and so on, and went and said to them, you're going to have to go on the internet. That was in 1995 when most people didn't even know what the internet was. And I certainly knew very little about the internet here. and they went to this firm and said, "Look, you're going to have to go on the internet." And luckily, this firm had the good sense to agree, and they actually gave these two little boys $4 million in cash.
Wow!
To start a system to put their newspapers onto internet, and all newspapers are on internet now, of course. So they sold that business about 3 years later. Elon was unhappy when they sold it, but they wanted, the people who put up money wanted their money back. And so they sold that business for about $500 million, much of it, two-thirds of it in cash, and the rest in stock options and everything. So they immediately became dollar millionaires at the ages of about 26, 27, Elon and Kimball. And then I was there at that time. And then Elon said to me, how much do you pay to write a check? Because in those days, we didn't have bank cards, and we didn't have anything like we use now, ATMs and stuff. Certainly here.
Yes.
And
yes.
If you wanted money, you wrote a check, and you went to the bank, and you handed it over the counter, and then the woman would give you cash. And so he said to me, how much do you think it costs to write a check? So I said at the time, I said, I don't know, maybe like, let's say talking pounds, I'd say about £1.50 or something like that, or £1.50, let's say, for each check. And then Elon said, if you do it over the internet, it's going to cost a fraction of a cent. So I said, oh. So then he said, yeah, he's going to start a bank called X. That's where he bought the domain x.com at that time. He paid $600,000 for that domain name to a guy who paid $39 for it initially. Anyway, he said he's going to start a bank that does money transactions on the internet, and that was PayPal. And then he joined with these other guys who were trying to do something, and they came up with this name PayPal. And he was the major shareholder, Elon. And then they sold it after a very short time, also about 2.5 3 years, for about $1.8 billion to eBay. Wow. And PayPal then became owned by eBay, but PayPal is much bigger than eBay is today. So it's worth, PayPal is worth much more than eBay. More than 60% of all transactions on the internet go through PayPal today.
True.
So that's how he got into that. And it was then after the sale of PayPal that he said he didn't know what to do with himself. So he joined the Mars Society in San Francisco, Robert Zubrin set up. And then he became very entranced by the idea of people going to Mars. And he met these people who were like practicing living in the desert so that they could kind of imagine what it was like living on Mars. And that's how he got into this rocket business.
So that's how I got into SpaceX. He had the money to invest in SpaceX, and SpaceX. Good friend of mine, Sir Richard Branson, and founder of Virgin, had been trying for years. I mean, literally, he was passionate about it, and he was quite surprised on how fast SpaceX kind of literally took off. And would you say there was a lot of support from NASA for Elon? And how did he manage to kind of like get through those doors? Because I mean, those are not because obviously they'd been doing their own thing for a private company to be able to get those contracts and get in there. That was quite bold. And obviously, Elon is not American. Elon is South African. So going to America. I mean, talk about disturbing the peace. Literally going to America and just being like, yeah, I'm going to go and take your government contracts. How did he do that? I mean, the money speaks, but there's a lot of people that had more money than him then in America. But how did he manage to go from being part of a mass society to actually launching SpaceX and partnering with NASA? How did that all happen?
Well, I think Elon described it. He said it's like jumping off a cliff while you're chewing glass.
Right. I like that.
So he decided he's going to build a rocket. So he tried to buy one from the Russians first, and they said no. They thought he was ridiculous. And then he decided. I was there when he started. I was one of the first 8 or 9 people who worked at SpaceX. And he bought this old, or he rented this old warehouse.
Wait, Errol, you actually worked. You worked for Elon. You actually worked for him.
Well, Yeah, not for a salary. I just worked there. You know,
Fair enough.
I helped, and I
Just
went in every
helping.
day.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and I used to live in LA there at that time, and so I went in every day, and you know, because he was going to do this, and so we needed to clean up this warehouse and all the. It
Yeah.
was not a bad building, and today it's a magnificent building, but and beautiful inside. But in those days it was kind of rough, and the lights were all falling out and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so yeah, so he then decided he's going to build his own rocket, and you know, where Elon is different to perhaps others is that he had about $100 million left after he put some money into Tesla and everything, you know, and he had $100 million, and he used that $100 million totally to be able to launch, which would turn out to be the fourth launch of the Falcon 1, which went into orbit, and it was 5 seconds of arc out of true. In other words, it was so perfectly launched and in such a perfect orbit, and that was the fourth rocket. But the first 3 rockets blew up, and so with the success of the fourth rocket and going into orbit with a genuine payload and everything, you know, NASA and all those people like couldn't believe it. They were, what the hey? And you know, the type of things that Richard Branson and people like that have been doing have been more like entertainment things where you show people a little bit of space or something like that. Elon was looking at the actual launching of satellites right from the beginning. And so with the success of the fourth launch, he suddenly became a big player. I mean, he was now a player. I mean, there were like 4 places in the setups in the whole world that could do that. And one of them was him. So he had done it, you know. So from then onwards, you know, he had to be taken seriously. And today, SpaceX is the only really viable launch facility into space on Earth. And
wow,
if, you know, everybody knows that it's the only viable. The Russians have rockets that were built in the 60s. They're still using them. America tried to build a new rocket recently, the Artemis. It was rubbish. Boeing was given nearly 3 times as much as Elon to build a capsule to go up to the International Space Station. Elon got it done within 2 years, and since then he sent about 20 people up to the International Space Station. Boeing sent 2 people up recently, and Elon had to go and rescue them this in the last week or so. So
yes, I read about that. Yeah.
So you know, but the thing is, just like I was with engineering, Elon found his feet in this kind of business where everything he could understand what he's doing. He knew what he was doing. He could feel and feel for what he was doing, and that makes a very big difference. It's like a musician, you know, something who knows how to do really good music. But in this case, it's the ability to completely understand the whole sort of concept of what he's doing all at once. And the result is that, you know, the launch now, you know, they caught this thing. It's the height of a 30-story building, and he caught it with tweezers. You know, you might have seen it the other day. You know, catching the rocket coming down.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, so yeah, so you know, SpaceX is serious. I mean, serious. SpaceX is also grossly undervalued. I would say, you know, with Starlink now, SpaceX is worth I don't know, $1 trillion.
And you know, obviously he's got a mission to colonize Mars, so that he wants to do that. Now, you know, obviously the Earth that we live in is a big place, right? There's a lot of things that can be done here. You know, what does it matter doing something in space when you have actual real issues on Earth? Is it not just like escapism? So, because I mean, this is how I look at things. If you are a violent person or you're a thief, and they move you to another planet, you're still going to do the same thing, right? Humans are not going to change if you take them to Mars. They will, if they were who they are, they are who they are when they walk through the door. So, isn't the emphasis about really making the world we live in much more of a better place, or investing in somewhere in the sky? You know,
I agree with you. I mean, how can I not agree with you? I mean, obviously, what you're
Mm,
saying is common sense. It's common sense what you're saying, and so I agree with you. It's a difficult one. On the other hand, if people like Orville and Wilbur Wright had not, been trying to build an aeroplane 100 years ago, 103 years ago, when it was 120 years ago, um, we wouldn't have airplanes today, and we would
yeah.
be still rowing across the Atlantic to each other.
Mm,
So, in
mm,
rowboats,
mm.
so, so,
Yeah.
so, so now,
No,
it's difficult to
you
say,
say
but I agree
it's
with you. I agree with you. There are a lot of problems. There are a lot of things that need to be sorted out here. Not only
mm,
there, but on the other hand, you, that's his talent. So you have to give them
mm,
credit for what they are doing, and it's obviously there's a lot of spin-offs from this work. So they get lots of new inventions from the things that they're doing, which spin off into the
mm,
everyday world, as well from all this type of research that they do. So it's true what you're
mm,
saying. I can't argue with you, but at the same
mm.
time, I wouldn't like to see this stopped. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very important to keep trying. Um, Elon has nailed the launching of ordinary satellites. I mean, this week
yeah. Starlink.
they sent 27 satellites up this week. And
Wow.
Elon has sent 85% of all satellites in orbit were sent up over the since 1960, have been sent up
Mm,
by Elon. So
mm.
thousands of satellites up there, all sent up by Elon. So yeah, uh, they've nailed ordinary launching. Where they're spending a lot of money now, like you're saying, why, is on this Mars effort. Each
Mm.
launch costs a lot of money, like $2 billion. So
Yeah.
it costs a lot of money just to practice with these giant rockets. I mean, these rockets are as high as a 44-story building. I mean, if you can
Mm.
imagine that. And I've been there. You just can't believe how big they are. I mean,
And of course,
you can't see the top.
on and of course, Kimball on the other side is doing something completely different. He's more interested in health, healthy food, and making sure people eat healthy, making sure people train about what you eat, you are what you eat. Which I kind of, because I mean I bought a ranch and a farm a few years ago, and I've been all about just healthy eating, making sure you are what you eat and all that sort of stuff, and you just feel yourself much more better. I'm more there on his side, because I'm like, do you know what? It's you are here, but I do get what you said. I mean, if the Wright brothers didn't invent the aeroplane, we won't be traveling all around the world. We won't be exploring, and there is something to that's good about exploring, and there's also something good about exploring where you are. Twitter. Uh, what was the rage of him buying Twitter? Because obviously, with the money he had, I mean, I own a social network, Telephonos, right? And we have a few million people on there. We have like 7.5 million people now. It's not the size of Twitter. It's called Telephonos, telephonos.com. But rather than buying Twitter and raising, spending billions of pounds to buy Twitter, wouldn't it have been better just launching a new social network? What was the point? Was there something to it? Was it connected to? I mean, a lot of people say it was connected to the fact that he wanted to invest more in the AI side of things. So, Twitter already has a data capture system that you can see the algorithms of what people are doing, that helps you with engineering how people socially behave, and obviously helps with AI programming. It was that part of the reason, because obviously I couldn't see the point in terms of, because marketing wise, advertisers were not kind of excited about this whole venture. So what was the point behind Twitter?
Well, Elon was totally not into that sort of thing at all up to
Yeah.
about the 21. And at the end, he was totally involved in Tesla and SpaceX and AI and Neuralink and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of 2021, Biden in America decided he's going to invite what he called all the electric car manufacturers to come to the White House and to spend 4 days there, 4 or 5 days there, discussing the ways in which America is going to be all electric cars by 2035. Now, he invited all these different motor manufacturers, but didn't invite Tesla.
Yeah,
and
I remember
Tesla
that.
year,
I remember that.
Tesla that year had made 1 million cars, and Biden introduced the CEO, a woman of GM, as the leading light in electric car making in America. And GM had only made 26 cars, and they never sold any cars. They made 26 and never sold anything. And Elon couldn't understand this. He was quite shocked. And so that was a wake-up call for him. He really couldn't understand what was going on. And then a month or two later, in January, February of 22, he became aware of the fact that when he objected to the situation, that he was getting tremendous bad publicity on this Twitter thing, and he couldn't understand why he was being criticized and ridiculed permanently on Twitter. And then people explained to him that, as it turned out later, and people discovered it, that Twitter was actually a propaganda arm of Biden's government, and Biden's government were giving instructions to Twitter on what they must say to make Elon looks, among other things, among other people, Elon to look stupid. And so Elon said, well, if that's what they're doing, then I'm going to buy Twitter, and I will make sure that they don't do it anymore. And so he said about buying Twitter. And when they heard he was going to buy Twitter, they panicked. And then they said, because he could have bought it, because I think Twitter was worth about $7 billion. And he could easily have bought it. And then they started making the price up and up and up and up. And eventually they made it $44 billion, to a point that they figured he can't buy this place anymore. And he still found the money for it, and he bought it for $44 million. And
$44 billion.
$44 billion.
$44 billion,
yeah. And so he then took it over and fired 7,500 of those people there, who were just, all really propagandists working for the government or something, for the Democrats. And he now runs it as X with only 1,000 employees. And it's now 6 times bigger than it was in 2022, at last time I heard. And so that's why I did it. And all Elon wants is for X to be a platform where anybody you can't break the law. You have to stick to the law, and you can't do bad things. But anybody can say the things they would like to say, not just Biden's people, because before that it was only Biden's people was allowed to say anything. Everybody else was sort of, what do you call it, blocked or something like that.
Banned,
yeah. So he's sitting with it now, and my brother's 2 sons more or less run it, and they're very smart guys, James and Andrew. And so, so it's going on pretty well now at Twitter. Elon, of course, has so many other things on his hands right now.
That's amazing. I can see why. It makes sense. It makes sense. Elon hates Bill Gates with a passion, or is it just or do they like each other? And they're just pretending? Because do they like each other? Because it seems like their way of thinking are I mean, Bill Gates is another. I mean, are they friends, or because I never see them eye to eye?
No. I mean, they know each other, and Bill Gates was a very leading light for many years. He was the sort of Elon of those days, maybe 20 years ago or something, and so everybody was very awe of Bill Gates, including Elon, and they've just Elon and them have passed him now, and and so, but I know they've met each other. I don't think Elon has any. Elon doesn't like to try and make enemies or tell people he doesn't like them, and he certainly wouldn't not like. Well, why would he say I don't like Bill Gates? What for? I don't know.
But one person he wasn't quite into years ago, which he's into now, is the old Donald Trump. And you were a big supporter of Donald Trump back in the day. and he wasn't, or maybe he was lukewarm about supporting Donald Trump, because he was trying to find his feet and he didn't want to be taken out by the business community there, because at that time, it wouldn't have been seen to be good to support Donald Trump. But did you guys have a falling out because he felt like your support of Donald Trump will be bad for business? And was it because he supported Donald Trump in the closet, and as they say, he just came out of the closet recently? What was it? Excuse the pun. What was it about Trump that you supported, and what was it about Trump that he didn't support at the time that he supports now?
Well, I was in the construction and development industry, factories, houses, everything, that hospitals, hotels, everything. And that's just what I did as a career. And from the 70s onwards, we looked from our little world here to the big world, like in America. And Donald Trump was doing these big things there. And, he turned the whole of the west side of Manhattan from railway sidings into very, very beautiful buildings. And so he was in the same kind of business as me, Trump. So he was like, you might say, we were all like sort of admired him, And then in 2015, I wasn't really terribly interested in the political scene myself. But in 2015, then I heard that he's going to stand for to be president of America. And of course, immediately I said, oh, that's great, because he's like me, he's the same. So that's like great. One of my kind of guys is going to stand for the presidency. So I immediately, because already then we were quite well known, and the newspapers and stuff would ask me or whoever, and then I'd say, well, I think Trump's terrific. And I didn't realize that there was so much sort of anger or something as far as Trump was concerned. I didn't understand what the problem was. Anyway, and when it was my 70th birthday, which was in 2016, Elon and Kimball came out to South Africa with about 20 adults and 20 children, all who'd been movie stars and one of the owners of Google and all that sort of stuff. And they came out here, and well-known people, really famous people. And they threw this big party in Cape Town for me. And at the end of the party, we took over this whole restaurant for everybody. And then at the end of the birthday party for me, John Favreau, he was there, he's the director of that particular movie. He leaned forward and he said to me, so, Mr. Musk, or Errol, I don't know what he called me. He said, you support Trump. I can still see him leaning over, and then everybody broke out into laughter, the whole crowd just started laughing, and then I said, well, I think Trump is good. And then they said, why do you think, oh, that's so funny? And they went on and on, and then I said, well, he does my kind of work. I said to Elon and Kimball, he's just like us. What's the problem? And afterwards, after the party, Elon and Kimball came to me and said, I really embarrassed them, because in order to be accepted in America, if you came from South Africa, and this was like an apartheid country, and you're supposed to have come from here, you have to sort of say, I never had anything to do with apartheid, I suppose, obviously we didn't have anything to do with apartheid. But you then join the most sort of wildly left groups you can in America, so that everybody like doesn't get on your back, sort of thing. And so Elon and Kimball did that. But since then, they've changed, and over the years, they now support Trump, and they don't worry about the Hollywood people anymore, So, I mean, from my point of view, talking politics now, or not politics so much as reality, Biden's people were ruining America, and Elon and them don't want that. They're desperate to keep America as a great place, And Trump, they have a better chance of things being normal and things being good for everybody, really.
But I mean, even saying that, I mean, obviously, I'm not American. I'm from the UK, so my stance, and I don't actually. The way I look at government is all the sides are the same. right? So you're literally picking both parties end up doing the same thing. However, Biden's Biden's tenure was a little bit weird because it felt like everybody can see what's happening and everyone pretending not to see what's happening.
Yeah,
That was, there's no way you could say to me, you can't see that this person clearly cannot lead a country, and everybody's saying to you, no, he can. I mean,
that's
that
true.
seemed, didn't that seem quite weird? Because I don't understand how nobody actually sits down and breaks this down and say, you went through accepting something that was weird, because it doesn't make any sense. You are one of the, well, you were one of the biggest countries, strongest countries in the world, being led by someone who um, looked weak, sounded weak, and didn't seem like he was running the country.
Well, yeah, you know, nobody. You see, the Americans are like very practical people. You know, I've just
Right.
been there months ago. I mean, again, I've been there twice this year. I mean, everything works. All the lights work. All the street lights work. All the roads don't have any holes in them. Everything's perfect. And so that's what the Americans want. They don't want any. They're very practical. So they're like workaholics as well. You know, they go to work at 6:30. They come home at 10 o'clock at night. They really like things to not. Everything must be good. And you know, when Trump finished, for example, his tenure, gas was, or petrol was, 179 a gallon. And then when I was there in December last year for the launch at Boca Chica, gas was $6 a gallon, and in New York it was $7 a gallon, which is huge for them. You know, because it's not like England where you have such short distances to travel. You know, if I'm in England, I don't. When I go to England, I never notice the. Excuse me, I just close this. I never notice the. In England, I never notice the price of fuel, because it's very expensive, but you don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So your car is, the furthest place you can go is an hour away. So
True.
you don't feel the
True.
price, you know, in England. But when you're in a place where you're going to drive, you know, hundreds of miles every day, or you know, or could easily drive many miles, 50, 60 miles a day, every day, then fuel becomes an issue. And so Americans are very practical. So if Biden had given them the goods, they would have just said, no problem, he stays. But when the Americans are practical, and so when they don't get the goods, when they start losing out, they're very, you know, no, they don't want that anymore. And whereas people like in England and Europe and that are used to, you know, perhaps things not being so perfect, and they don't try to blame everything on the government. But in America, you know, they do. They want things to be perfect. You know, in America, if your lawn's not mowed, your neighbor will call the council, and the council will come and give you a
That's true.
£150 fine.
That's true.
Yeah, they're very serious about everything's got to be perfect.
So yeah, no, that's true. And the good news came recently, a few weeks ago, when Elon was given a position in the government there in America. I mean, obviously, you're proud of all your, as a father, you know, I'm a father too. You'd be proud of all your children. But how does it feel, you know, seeing one of your children going all the way? I mean, I mean, I'm sure he's achieved a lot of things that there's a lot of eye-turner moments, but now he's gone all the way now to the top of the government chain. And again, he's not an American. He's from South Africa. So again, how does that feel? Because that, I mean, it's unheard of. I think historically that's never been done before. So how does that feel when you look at that as a father who you know, raised your children from the start, to see your child literally go that far? How does that feel?
Well, you know, as a parent, do you have children at this time?
I have children. Yeah, I have two. Yeah, I have two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when you have children, like, you're proud of your children right away. You know, you don't have to
Yes.
be waiting for something to happen where you suddenly say, oh, now I'm proud of them. No, you're proud of them from the day they breathe, you know, or she. And no, so as they get older, you worry about them, you know, being able to earn a living and and not get into trouble and do everything, you know, and that they'll be all right. They'll be all right, you know, earn a living, you know. And so that's the biggest thing that for a parent is you worry about. And you know, so you don't like suddenly they achieve something and you walk around telling everybody else, look what my child did. You don't do that. I mean, for a start, I think this is an extra load on him, and he's already got a big load. But you know, you have to give them credit, give Elon credit, you know, for it. I mean, let's say that's great. I mean, where it's gonna, how he's gonna do it, I don't know. I wish him strength. Thank heavens he has the other guy to help him, you know. So it's not just Elon on his own. So that's a big help, because Elon can't go into an office every day with a suitcase and sit behind a desk all day.
It's not what he does. It's not what he does. It's not what he does.
No, he can't do that.
I like some of the things he's invested in. There's one that, you know, everybody's kind of wary about. I'm sure you have something to say about it. I mean, look, I've got kids. I'm not going to support everything they do. There's the Neuralink. When you look at Neuralink, it's a lot of people who are a little bit scared, right? Because it looks quite prophetical, you know, because obviously, you know, putting something into your brain, something that reads. And I know, you know, there's the side of things where, you know, it will be helpful for some people that literally are handicapped or disabled. There's a lot of help causes there. But on the other side, and what we've seen in history, is that most of inventions that were geared towards helping people, even your local CCTV has become surveillance TV. I mean, in London, in the UK, for example, every single second of mileage, you have surveillance. Do we not see things? I mean, the robots and the Neuralink, do we not see a time in future where things can go wrong? You know, I mean, it's very
that's why Elon
easy.
has been warning about that. Elon has been the #1 person to warn about that. So Elon is not the person you need to worry about. He's the one who's been saying for a long time now that you need to introduce, you know, controls and regulations, as you clearly pointed out. And so, so Elon's definitely will agree with you there, you know. And the other thing is, of course, that Neuralink is really aiming at helping people who are deaf to recover hearing, and hopefully people who are blind to be able to see again, and hopefully to be able to join nerves so that people who are, you know, paralyzed can walk again. And so I don't have any doubt in my mind that if we were 20 years from now, could be 20 years from now, we will look back and say that, you know, that we didn't realize what they can do, because I think they're going to achieve all those things. And I think 20 years from now, or maybe sooner, hopefully, sight will be restored. Deafness will be restored. You know, limbs that were paralyzed will be able to walk again, and all that sort of stuff. And I've got no doubt about it whatsoever. You know, they've already got massive achievement with chips that they put in, you know, to people's brains. I mean, to enable them to work computers from their mind. So what they're doing is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's probably the best thing that Elon's doing.
And I mean, would you leave with a robot, like an AI robot, if you were given one of those things to leave with? Would you be confident to leave with this AI robot?
It'd be kind of creepy if I was alone in the house with a robot. You know, I mean,
this is where it's going to.
If I'm in the house alone, you know, and the robot's walking around, I would find that kind of creepy. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not ready for that yet. No, I'm okay. Thanks.
That's what everyone is thinking. I mean, that leads quite nicely to my next question, and it's on spirituality and belief. Are you someone who believes in God? And if that's correct, or I don't know if it's true or not, is that something that you brought up your children in believing as well? Or like, I mean, what's your stance? Are you someone that believes in God?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, just like everybody else on earth, you know, I think I believe in God. And those who say they don't, they're just putting on they're just performing or pretending. Because, you know, as Elon used to say when he was at university, you know, he'd say to me, Dad, there's no atheists at exam time. No atheists at
Because
exam
everyone is
time.
praying.
And I've
That's
been
true.
flying airplanes long enough to know that when I've been flying airplanes and I've got passengers in the plane and the weather gets bad or things look tough, they all start praying, you know, and you know, it doesn't matter who they are. And also I've been out at sea when we've been in very bad storms, and I've seen grown men just grasp each other and hold each other, singing hymns and pleading to God to help and all that kind of stuff. So it depends on how comfortable you are. So if you're very comfortable and everything's going nicely, then you talk like this Richard Dawkins guy, you know.
Yeah.
Stupid as far as I can see. It's a real dope. But at any rate, he talks about, you know, he's so famous and everything, and he's and there's no God, you know, there's just nonsense, you know. I mean, we don't even know who we are, Jordan. We don't know who we are. We don't know.
That is true.
We have
That is true.
clue what
No
we
idea.
are.
No idea at all. Yes.
We don't know if we don't even know. We didn't exist a few blinks back in time, and a few blinks in front. We're apparently not going to exist anymore. So it's all kind of crazy. Who the hell are we? We're sitting here on a little piece of grit in the middle of space, and space goes on, you know, forever around us, and we are starting to say, no, there's no God, no, there's no God, just us, you know, we are God, you know. I mean, you have to be really stupid to talk like that. Everybody, every human being I've ever known, from especially when they're small, children grasp the concept, and your kids will grasp the concept of a heavenly power or God or whatever you want to use it as. Very quickly. You don't have to explain to a child twice or three times. They know it right away. They fully understand. Oh, okay, I got it, Dad. And that's when they're 3 years old. They start picking it up, and so what I'm saying is, when the chips are down and things are really bad and people are firing guns at you and whatever it is, and you're in serious trouble, that's when you say, please God, give me strength, give me a mind that helps, make me strong. Please. Who are you talking to? You know?
Yes.
But in reality, we don't know who we are. We have no concept of what happens to us when we die. A lot of people think you go on somewhere. Others say you don't. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the spark of life is. Nobody knows.
What do you think? What do you think happens when you sleep?
Yeah, that's you and I could talk for hours. I mean, a subject like that, because what happens when you sleep? Nobody knows. Nobody knows, Jordan. You go to sleep and you have these incredible dreams where you see people you've never seen in real life.
I believe I've always believed that words are the full stop to asking questions, because the word dream is kind of prevents you from actually investigating what happens when you sleep, because I really believe your soul leaves your body.
Good.
And
very clever.
What happens, because sometimes you get up from those dreams and it felt so real, and literally you don't have that conversation with nobody ever again, because like, we don't talk about this. You carry on your life and you never talk about what happens when you sleep, because it's embarrassing. You don't talk to anybody, and we all leave this life. Nobody sits down and no one documents it. You don't write it down. You don't document nothing. It's just a thing that you don't talk about. And it's very intentional. It's very intentional that you go through your whole life sleeping and not knowing what happens when you sleep. You don't study it at school. You don't research it. You don't investigate it. It's just a dream and you're gone to sleep. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And the things, you are so 100% right. And so nobody knows. And so if you try and talk about it to people who think or pretend that they know, then they sort of like change the subject, you know. But nobody knows. So you have a dream that you're at this place and you remember everything, the furniture and the books on the shelf and the tea in the cup and this person that you spoke to and what they look like, and you've never seen them before. You've never seen them in real life. And then you wake up and suddenly you're back here, you know, and you go, wow, what happened? Where was I? Am I right?
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Do you believe that some people are born with special powers, or do you believe that? I'm saying that because if you look at your life, and I look at my life, I look at my mom's the same, my dad's was the same. My dad was one of the first people that launched the bank in Africa, won awards for it. My mom, I mean, myself, like literally, you look at your history. When I say superpower, a lot of people work as hard as you work and as hard as Elon works, and they have dreams and they achieve certain things, but not everybody kind of literally goes on that level where anything that you think of comes to light. And you can actually say, well, you know what, you don't know how much I've worked hard for it. But I want to take the word lock out of it, because I really think lock doesn't exist. You need to create your own lock. I think some people have got some superpowers, and not in a mystical kind of way, but it's just like, when you walk in a room and say, hey, you know what, this person, there's this thing that this person has got, that you can have 10 people doing the same thing. That person has something that's different.
Yeah.
Do you think you have that? Do you think you pass that on? Do you think Elon has that? I mean, clearly, and and it's not just Elon. If you look at your family, I know you have a daughter who owns a kind of Netflix-based platform.
Yes.
And she's been successful there. And that too could have been a situation where Elon could have invested in, but she took all that money and blew it away, and it wasn't successful. But to do something that everybody's doing, something that consistently makes it, there's got to be something else in there. I mean, when you look at it, do you ever ask yourself, there must be a kind of little superpower there? Because a lot of people have that. Like you mentioned Trump, you mentioned, you could see that there's something. The Wright brothers, said Graham Bell. Tim Berners-Hill, who started the internet. Everything you will see, there will be something when you speak to them. There's something there that's not normal, like everybody else.
Well, a lot of the time, people like you talk about the Wright brothers and things. The secret is you keep on trying. So it's
Right.
it's people who've got this sort of tenacity to keep on and on and on and on trying, that actually then finally, suddenly they make a breakthrough. So it's a lot of the time, most people will give up on a thing, and then you get other people, some people who just will not give up. And those people, sometimes they just kill themselves or die in the process, and other times they succeed. But I would agree with you. Everything you said is like, like common sense. It's very real to me. I agree with you on everything. I don't know what to say except yes, you're right. But I would put it like this: that some people have an X factor.
Yes.
And that X factor is different. And with the X factor, somehow things are different for them. But it doesn't mean their lives are easier. It doesn't mean things go better for them just by themselves. But they still, at the same time, they have an X factor, and type of thing. So people, you can see right away when somebody has an X factor. I think so. I can see it.
Yeah, I think you've defined it in a way without doing it, and I'll tell you how you've defined it. What you said is to keep on trying, and it sounds like very simple common sense. But the reason why they keep on trying, I think the X factor is that they've seen the Picasso internally. They saw the picture of the final product that nobody else saw. So it's haunting them. It's haunting them, and they have to keep doing it to make sure that picture comes to real life. And they can explain it to people all day long, and nobody will ever. I mean, imagine Elon sitting down and saying to somebody, "Hey, I'm going to build this rocket that's going to go into," and people will be like, "Oh, Elon, come on now, mate. It's not going to happen." Right. It's never. But he's seen it. You've seen it internally, right?
Yeah.
It's like you buying the plane at 24. I'm sure at that point, not people probably try to stop you, but you saw it. Nothing could stop you at this point. You've seen it. I have to do it. I have to do it.
Yeah. No, you're so right. I think you're so right. I haven't thought of it like that before, but it's true that people who make a big success, in their head, they've already seen the end product.
They've seen it.
They've seen it.
They've seen it. They've seen it.
And they've seen what it is that nobody else can see, but they can see it. They can see that end product, and they're trying to get to that end product. No, you're so right. That's a very interesting way to put it, actually. I've never thought of it like that. And so, yeah, that is really true. And you ask yourself, well, why do they keep on pushing? It's because they can see what it is they're trying to do. They can see where they're trying to get, you know? And I mean,
I agree with that.
musicians or something. I'm useless at music. I wish I could play something. I'd go and play every day in the tube stations or something. But if I could, but I can't. But you look at those people who write these magnificent songs and everything. I imagine that they also have some idea of what they're looking for at the end before they start. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think
completely agree with you. Completely agree with you.
You know, in engineering stuff, you're like architects. You know, when I work a lot with architects, they see the finished building, what they want to have,
and nobody else can see that.
Yeah, well, they can see it, but that's the only person that's important.
Yes,
it's them. Yeah,
definitely. No, recently, I posted this video of Mike Tyson, and we booked Mike Tyson for an event 4 or 5 years ago, and when he came to it was in LA. Actually, we were doing the National Film and Television Awards in LA, and he was meant to present a category, and this went viral actually, and I wasn't aware. I was producing backstage, and I was waiting for him backstage. So the idea was he was going to go for the red carpet, come backstage, and I was going to give him his script, talk to him, etc., etc. And we're very excited. And it's Mike Tyson we're talking about. So he comes in to the front of the main entrance, and the security won't let him in. And I'm like, this is Mike. Everyone knows how Mike Tyson looks like. And he walks away. And, you know, the cameras, the paparazzi follow him on, you know, and catch him, and they bring, and one of the venue members takes him backstage, and he comes and meets me backstage. And then I have no idea what happened at the front of house, that he's been embarrassed, etc., etc. And he's calm, and he's not, I mean, anybody else will be in a rage, so angry, and he's not. He's just calm, and I have no idea. And I gave him a present. I gave him some watches that we were the Chevelle watches, and I spoke to him, and he was just calm. And he ended up halfway through the award ceremony disappearing and not presenting the category. I mean, I don't blame him, because afterwards, when I saw the video, which leaked and went viral, I just saw how they made him feel. And why I'm asking this question is because he just fought recently. Great man. And obviously the media perception of him and me seeing him in that state where he should be losing it and him not losing it was a different view of the whole thing. So he just fought recently into the fight against Jake Paul, which I know. I mean, we all know is a script. I mean, we're not. No one was born yesterday. Come on, but. As a little girl interviewed him, and he was really blunt on his answer about legacy. The girl said, "What would you like your legacy to be?" And Mike just did not miss a point. He just turned around, and he didn't care whether this girl was like, probably she looks about 9 years old, and he just said, "What is legacy? Legacy means nothing. Like when you're gone, nobody cares, right? Nobody really cares." That's his opinion. But when you look at what he said, nobody gets up in the morning nowadays and says, "Oh, do you know what? I really miss Muhammad Ali, or I really miss Michael Jackson, or people, or Nelson Mandela was sacrificed a lot for this country, South Africa, and I really miss." You admire what they did, but how does it affect your life? And sometimes people leave life and they worry about their legacy so much, and there's that question that people say, what would you like your legacy to be? And it was quite interesting to see Mike Tyson's answer to it, that he just doesn't care about his legacy because it doesn't really matter. And then when I started deep diving and looking at, the pharaohs and the Egyptians Mansa Musa, who was one of the richest people in Africa, the prime ministers like Margaret Thatcher, who was called the Iron Lady of the UK, people that came, John F. Kennedy, all these people that came before. When you think about how they talk about them today, is legacy that important?
Yes. I mean, look, I think Mike Tyson doesn't want to draw attention to himself by saying that he wants a big legacy. I mean, he's obviously got a
He
big
didn't say
legacy.
no. He didn't say
You know,
no. He didn't say he wants a
yeah.
big legacy. He said he doesn't care about legacy.
No,
He
I
actually
know, but
said,
that
yeah,
he had to say that because otherwise he'll sound like a bit maybe self opinionated or something. So I think he said the right thing. But what
yeah,
you should really realize is that all nations, from the beginning of time that I've read about, and they always honor their ancestors. So
mm,
all the really worthwhile nations hold their ancestors in great, sort of memory. They always revere their ancestors. Every nation group that I've ever known has a tremendous, you know, um, love of the ancestors. And if you look at, I was in Dubai recently, and I was with one of the princesses of the royal family, and we were talking
mm,
about um, some of the projects that we planned for Dubai. One
mm,
was a freshwater lake on the landward side, which I suggested,
mm,
and then she said, oh, if only my ancestors could be here now and see what we've done, and that kind of stuff. So
mm,
she said, I can feel ancestors in the room with us. So you realize people do actually look back on their ancestors. No one, I don't know anybody who doesn't. Everybody looks
mm,
back on the memory of their mom and dad and their
mm,
grandmom and those that they knew, and
mm,
they wouldn't, because you sort of in your heart you sort of hope that they with God or something, like the religions
mm,
people
mm,
say, and so you pray for them still. You still pray for your
mm,
ancestors. You pray for your mom or your dad or your grandmother or whatever,
mm, mm,
and I don't think I'm alone in that. I think everybody does.
mm,
You revere your ancestors, so you don't do anything that your ancestors would look down on you and say, "Well, I
mm.
don't like." I mean, I look at you today, and I think your ancestors must be looked down on you and say, "Wow, they're
Yeah,
very pleased with you." But the thing is,
yeah,
because you want them to be pleased with you, wouldn't you? And so, I I I would say, if you ask a person, "Do you want to have a great legacy?" I would say everybody wants to be remembered as somebody who tried their best and who
mm,
was prepared to, help others and all that kind of stuff,
mm,
and wasn't a mean person or something. But it's a difficult subject, Jordan.
mm. So, with that being said, what would you want your legacy to be? If when you look back, you're 78 years young now,
Yeah,
right? 78 years young, which is young. 78 years is not. I mean, today's. I'm in my 40s, and when I was growing up, 40s to me was like, Jesus Christ.
old man.
But 78 today is not
Yeah,
78 of, it's
no.
true. I mean, people that are 78, 80 today don't look 78, 80. So in terms of legacy, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, I would like to be remembered as a man who discovered how to, sort of levitate or something like that. I don't know. I'd like to invent
How
something.
is that still
I know,
going? Are
no,
you
no.
still discovering it?
I'm just joking here for a moment. I'd
Of
like to be
course.
remembered as somebody who invented something good. Like, I don't know,
Mm,
something really nice, something very useful. But actually, I mean, at the end of the day, what I said before is what you really want. You want to be remembered as that you were a loving, kind person, and that you tried
mm,
very hard to work hard, and that and that you gave things as much as you could for your children, and you cared about others, and that you were a good example of what
mm,
you want your children and their children to be, and
mm.
that I think is what any normal person would want. I wouldn't want a statue of myself, you know.
That
Sorry.
would be. I mean, that would go against the Ten Commandments, Errol. That would be like worshiping idols.
No, no. I think
um,
we all want to be remembered as somebody who was trying their best, and who
yeah.
was always laying down good rules and regulations. So like I remember with my mom and that, when I was a little boy, they would say if it had happened to be something that I was doing wrong, she might have said to me, well, my dad or her mother, her father or mother, your granddad would have said you're not to do this, and then because he was such a good man. And then you think, oh, yeah, my granddad, he must have been a really great man because he didn't do these things that I'm doing. He was a good guy. I've got to learn to be like that too. So then that's really what you want, to be well remembered.
I like that.
But as for your ancestors, everybody looks back on their families and their groups and the people before them and just thank God for them, because without all those people, you wouldn't even be here.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And that's a good way to look at it. You're standing on the shoulders of giants that were there before you. And that's the reason why when we actually started the interview, I started with your parents. And our parents might not be perfect, but our parents' imperfections made us who we are. And there's a lot that has, that tenacity, those things that we learn, the good, bad, and the ugly. Actually, those are the things that actually make us who we are. And sometimes a lot of people maybe sometimes disassociate themselves with those things because they really don't see the beauty in the imperfection and the perfections. And I think you're right. You have to always kind of look back at, those who have come before you to see where you're going and to also learn from their mistakes and learn from the good things that they did and celebrate the good things that they did. That's why I was happy when you said on one of your 70th birthdays, Elon and friends and everyone came down to South Africa to celebrate with you and do something and actually show. And I'm also happy that Elon made a speech and actually said, I know you made a joke out of it, but he did. That was him kind of opening up and saying, and obviously,
nice.
Some of these stories and some of the scandals are because people do, when you're put under pressure, when you're in Hollywood, you do make mistakes and say things to help the cause. But that sounded like he was being genuinely thankful for the things that you've actually contributed in his life, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's the truth. If you're Pablo Escobar, your son is going to be Escobar Jr. You know what I mean? And if you are the right brothers, your kids will be on a level. But so as we come, driving right through to the closing part of the show, we have this thing with you on the show, a little game just to kind of cheer the moment. It's called Top 5, and we always ring the bell. I don't know if you have a glass of wine there. We always have a glass of wine when we do our top 5. I don't know if you got a glass of wine on your side.
No,
and top 5 is where we do your top 5 best things of all time. So we're going to start with your top 5 best books of all time. You're someone who's lived life. You've been an entrepreneur. You've been through so much. What are your top 5 books that you would say these are the books that I recommend?
Wow. Oh, there's so many. I couldn't think of one. If I'm really honest and sounds corny, I'd say the Bible is a very important book. I mean, most people don't really look at it much, but it's a really interesting book. And I wouldn't, it sounds a bit corny, but actually it's not a bad idea. And then, of course, I look at the first book that really interests me was a book by Immanuel Velikovsky, which I bought when I got it as a prize when I was 12 years old. I chose it as a prize for my 12-year. I came first in class, and I got this book. It's called Worlds in Collision, and it dealt with the destruction of the dinosaurs, and which gave me an idea of the fact that life on Earth, wasn't always like this when I was 12 years old. And then I that was a big eye opener for me. But there are so many books that I would really not be able to just say that book or this book, But I would say that for the world, people in the world, I mean, the books that matter are the Quran and the Bible, and that can teach people so much stuff, And
when you say the Bible, are you talking about the King James version, the Ethiopian version, or going back to? Have you read the Nag Hammadi, by the way? Have you read the Nag Hammadi? It goes to the Nag Hammadi is the lost scriptures, the ones that we put in the Bible, like Book of Enoch.
I've seen some of those things.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, for just general things that teach people how to behave, Or it's
Yes.
not like I have an easy answer to this. I mean, if you treat people the way you'd like to be treated, you know, be thankful every day. Look at the heavens and say, thank you that I exist. Look at your ancestors and say, thank you for what you did, and
Yeah.
let
Thank
me
you,
be
God. Yeah.
here. You know, so
Yeah.
a book, you know, all the books in the world deal with this kind of thing, you know, one way or another. So, you know, I would say every book is the most important book I've ever read. Every single book is the most important book I ever read.
And the next top 5 will be maybe say top 5. I'm sure you're going to be able to do this one easily. You've traveled to a lot of countries. You've lived in the UK. I know you love South Africa a lot. But what's your top 5 best countries to travel or live in? You can put South Africa there as well.
Well, the UK, I love England. You know, if I could, I'd like to live in England, in Cheltenham or something like that. It's very pretty. So I like England. And then, of course, there's the weather. So it's very difficult. The whole world is beautiful. It's just not, it's everywhere is beautiful. It's not like there's special countries or anything like that. My iPad is down to 1%. So quickly, the next question.
The next question is, what's your final word for all the listeners watching today and all the viewers watching about Elon Musk, and the whole family? Final word of where you like to see things going with his brand, where you like to see things going with yourself and the family as a whole.
Okay, then I'll quickly say, I would say this. Elon, when he was 14, he gave me a cassette of a song that was sung by Louis Armstrong, and it was "What a Wonderful World." So that what I would leave your listeners with is that next time you're in a miserable state of mind, listen to Louis Armstrong's song "What a Wonderful World," and then you will immediately not be in a bad mood anymore. So
Errol,
I would leave
you've been
that
amazing.
That
You've been amazing, mate.
Just do that. And
amazing.
Then you realize we live in a wonderful world, and all the little things that are niggling you are not important at all. And you should be really grateful for everything that's going on around you all the time. That's what I would say.
Amazing. Errol, you've been amazing, mate. We're looking for, we have to catch a beer one of these days in Cape Town or in Johannesburg. And, you know, good to speak to you, and we'll catch up soon, mate. Take care. Take care.
Thanks, Jordan. It was very enjoyable.
No worries. God bless. And you too, mate. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.